What's up guys, welcome back to the channel again for tuning in. And today I'm going to be doing a review on my 2020 Toyota Corolla Hatchback XSE. And what inspired this review in the first place was when I first bought this car, I wasn't all that excited about buying a practical and efficient Toyota. But through the few months of ownership, it's really surprised me how much I've came to really love this car. So in today's video, I plan on going over everything that I love about the car, looks, interior, all that. And we're also going to touch on a few things that I'm not too fond about this car. All right, so let's start here in the front end of the car, and I think it's safe to say that Toyota really knocked it out of the park in terms of the design of this car. And that's what initially attracted me into purchasing this vehicle. I mean, this thing is just sharp, sporty, and has aggressive styling all throughout the vehicle. And making our way back towards the rear end of the car, you can see that same aggressive, sharp, sporty styling carries its way all the way throughout the entirety of the vehicle, including the brake lights, which are full LED lights, brake lights, tail lights, reverse lights, headlights, fog lights, all the lights are LED on this vehicle. But a fun fact to note is that for some reason in the sedan version of this car, Toyota doesn't offer LED brake lights. They offer LED headlights, but in the sedan version, they don't offer LED tail lights. In the hatchback, they're always gonna be LED. Don't know why that is, but it is what it is. Now, as much as I love the exterior styling, again, I think it looks fantastic. There's one thing about the exterior that I'm not a fan of, and it's not just in the Corolla. To me, this is something that's plaguing the entire auto industry, and that's this right here. The bumper molded fake faux exhaust exit. I don't know why they do that, though. Again, that's not a deal breaker for me. It's just a little nitpick, but in my opinion, I think this is probably one of the better executions of those bumper molded fake exhaust tips, or whatever you want to call it. But outside of that one little nitpick, I really have nothing negative to say about the exterior styling of this car. I think, again, Toyota did a phenomenal job with it, and it looks incredibly sharp and stylish, and so much so that you'd be surprised how many people have came up to me, whether it be friends, neighbors, or coworkers, and they ask, what is this, you know? And then after I tell them, or they see the Toyota badge on the front or back of the car, they'd be surprised to see that it's a Corolla. Now again, this is a small compact vehicle, so that means you're not going to be working with that much trunk space. In the Toyota Corolla hatchback, you're working with 17.8 cubic feet of it. And Toyota doesn't specify if that's with the rear partition in place and the rear seats up, or if that's just the total amount of cargo space that you would have available with this taken out and the rear seats folded down. So for those of you that hear 17 cubic feet of cargo space and don't exactly know what that translates to in day-to-day life, what can you carry? What can't you carry? Is that big or small? Is that going to suit my everyday needs? Well, here's my attempt to help you better picture what can fit in this car. So to kind of help you get a better idea of what can fit in this car, I have here something I feel like most people should have a general idea of the size of, and that's just one standard size check-in luggage. And as you can see loaded up, this one suitcase essentially takes up the whole trunk space. Now, as you can see, this one standard suitcase takes up most of the rear trunk space with the partition up and with the rear seats folded up as well, with just maybe a little bit of room to fit maybe a backpack or two. But the one thing I do like about the trunk space here is that they do have little cubbies right in here, I guess normally where some dead space would normally be. And I mean, you could keep stuff like microfiber towels or any supplies that you may use to clean the windshield or detail the car. And underneath the floor mat here, you have a little handle to access the spare tire, jacking equipment, everything you need to swap out in case of a flat. Now, one gripe that I do have about this car is right now I have the front seat set up for me and my driving position. And if I were to release the rear seat here and push it forward, you can see it gets caught on the rear seat. So in order for me to put both of these seats down, assuming my passenger isn't as tall as I am, I'm gonna have to move the seat up just so I can lay this whole rear seat flush. So as I mentioned before, this is a small compact car, which means there's not gonna be that much space for people sitting in the back. Right now I have the driver's seat positioned for me. I'm 6 foot tall, and it's not terribly uncomfortable back here. It's a little bit tight. I have a little bit of knee space, but I wouldn't want to be back here for any more than like an hour on the road. And making our way inside the Corolla, again, I think Toyota did an incredible job making this car look phenomenal, both inside and out. So much so that this car looks a lot more expensive than what it is when you sit inside. Not so full of that cheap plastic or anything like that. Now, yes, I know that this car still has a ton of cheap plastic and fake leather and all that sort of thing for budget reasons. Obviously, this is a budget car, but the fact that Toyota was able to make these cheap materials look much nicer than what they are. Everything from the aluminum looking finish, which I know is cheap plastic, the shiny piano black, which again, cheap plastic, but again, the fit and finish and the look, the final look of everything just comes together to make it look like a much finer quality. I think you will be pleasantly surprised once you step inside and you just see the quality of the materials that they put in here. Granted, yes, I know this isn't real leather or any kind of fancy plastic, but they do make it look nice, and I think that's what's important, making it look much more expensive than what it really is. Now this model, and I believe all the Corollas, have the black piano trim, which look absolutely incredible. Granted, yes, I know it is still plastic, but it's shiny plastic and it makes it look nicer and more expensive. But the downside of black shiny plastic is that it is an absolute fingerprint magnet. So there's a lot of surfaces here that you will be touching, and so it will get dirty really, really quickly, as was my experience, or as is my experience. And this one also comes equipped with the optional 8-inch touchscreen, 8-inch display here for your infotainment system, which is equipped with Toyota's InTune system, which I don't know anyone who actually uses it. And to be honest, I've barely used it myself. And from my limited experience, it's not all that great. But good news, it also comes equipped with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which, let's be real, you're going to be using that anyway. So the built-in Toyota InTune system doesn't even really matter to you. Now, one thing of note inside the car, I think that's really notable and it's really impressive. Not that big of a deal, but this car has full automatic windows, but every single window automatic, both up and down. And I mean, that's something that you really don't see in a car of this price range. Again, if it doesn't have it, it's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely a nice to have. Just one and done. And some of you may have noticed that there is no traditional manual e-brake like there is in most manual cars. Instead, we have an electronic e-brake, works in a similar fashion as a traditional one. You pull up to engage it. Right now it is on, but you also push down to disengage it. And you also see a readout right here on the dash. So right now it's off, so you won't see anything. And once I engage it, it'll let you know that it's in park. Now, some of you may notice that there is another button right next to the e-brake, which is a hold. It has a little circle with what looks like to be parentheses. And what that is, it's an auto hold function. And this only works if you have your seatbelt buckled. So if you go ahead and push that, right now it's disengaged, and it'll let you know in the dash right here, right there in the green, it'll let you know that auto hold is on, or active, I should say. And let's say you come to a red light or you're at in standstill traffic. So with the parking brake disengaged, all you have to do is give a firm press of the brake, and it'll let you know that it's engaged with an orange hold right there in the dash. So let's say if I put this thing in gear and give a little bit of gas, it's going to assume that I'm going to try to move forward and disengage the brake for me. And you can see I pushed firmly on the brake and it re-engaged for me. So now I just have to make sure it's in neutral and I can let off the brake, and it's going to hold the car for me. And then all I have to do, like I mentioned before, put it in gear, give it some gas, and it's going to assume I want to move forward. And then firm press on the brake, and it lets me know right there. Now, the one downside to having an electronic parking brake in this car is that in the event that the battery dies, there's no way for you to move the car. I know this because it's already happened to me. Sure enough, as luck would have it, I was at the entrance of the driveway blocking several other people, and sure enough, I hop in the car trying to move to let other people out. Battery was dead. Could not even disengage the parking brake. And that's when I broke out the user manual, started looking up forums online, everything. Could not find a way to disengage the parking brake with a flat battery. So if you don't have a jumper cable nearby or any way to power up the vehicle to at least disengage the parking brake, you're stuck. Now, I mentioned one gripe that I had with the car, that outside, that being the fake bumper molded exhaust. And I have a couple gripes of the interior. Again, I think they did a great job, but there's just a few things in here that really just kind of annoyed me. Again, not deal breakers by any means, but they could have done better. Now, the first complaint that I have with this car is where the data port for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is located. Now, you would think that it would traditionally be found underneath of the armrest where your charging port is located. There is a port under there, and it's strictly for charging. You plug that in, there's going to be no data transfer, and you can't use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto through that port. So you might be asking, where is it located? And after a few days of owning this car, I had to take it back to the dealership to find out that the port is located underneath of the dash right here, which is a really odd place to put it. And not only that, there's no markings on the outside or anything telling you otherwise that that port is there. But another grievance that I have is the fact that now you're left with this stray cable, if you will, coming out from underneath the dash. I've tried to come up with a simple solution to try to keep it neat and just wrap it around the gear selector here. I would plug in my phone and then have it resting inside the cubby right over there, which I guess that's what it was intended for, but still it's not the prettiest look. And another thing that kind of annoys me about this car is the lights, the dome lights. Now, traditionally in other vehicles, they integrated the button of the dome light into the dome light. So at nighttime, you just go, you see the big light, you go ahead and push it, activates the light. In this car, there is a separate button up here, but here, the button for the light is separate. So that means if you want to activate the light, you push the light, nothing happens. The button to turn it on and off is separate. And worse yet, these buttons are not even backlit illuminated. So that means at nighttime, if for whatever reason you need to turn on the dome light so you can see something on the floor, you're going to be over here pushing around trying to find the button like I have countless times. I think that could have been a super easy fix just to make these backlit illuminated, just like the rest of the buttons in the dash, whether it be for the auto high beams or any other button that you would be pushing for whatever reason. I don't see why Toyota didn't just make those backlit illuminated, or even better yet, just build the button directly into the dome light. I can't tell you how many times at nighttime I need to turn that thing on and I'm just over here pushing and pushing around until I eventually find the dome light. So in total, I'm left with 3 different grievances that I have with this car. That being the fake bumper molded exhaust tips that are in the back, the data port where it's located in order for you to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and the dome light, that being that you can't push the dome light, that the activation switch, the on-off switch isn't built into the dome light, that switch is a separate button, and worse yet, those buttons aren't even backlit illuminated. So that way at nighttime, if you needed to use them for whatever reason, you're left poking around and hunting to turn on and off that dome light. But those, like I said, none of those are deal breakers by any means, just little nitpicks that I have with the car and something I've learned to come to live with. And I think you could do the same. All right, now moving on to the driving characteristics of the car. Toyota did engineer this car to be a little bit on the sporty side. And I can tell you right now, in the parking garage, just getting my way down to the ground level, it handles pretty well. It's on the stiffer side, which makes sense because they wanted this thing to be a little bit sporty, but it's nothing too stiff that you can't handle day to day. Because at the end of the day, this thing is a daily driver. Now, in terms of acceleration, this thing has 169 horse, so you're not impressing anybody with it. Though it is fair to note that this thing weighs about 3,000 pounds, so it carries its weight really nicely, but you're not breaking any records and you're not winning any street races with this. Trust me. I know. And driving on the highway or even through town, you notice this car isn't well insulated, and by that I mean it lets in a lot of road noise. So I don't know how much you guys can hear, but even going over those painted crosswalk lines, and just driving on the road in general, especially if you're driving on a rough patch of road, you can hear a lot of the outside noise. So if that's a factor to you, this car doesn't really insulate you from the outside very well. Another nice feature to see on a car of this price range is that it is equipped with auto hold, and especially in a manual transmission, this helps you a lot when you're trying to start uphill. I mean, this manual transmission is easy enough to learn and drive with day to day, but having auto hold is an incredibly nice feature. So right now we're at a light, I'm not holding the brake right now, the car is holding the brake for me, and it's not going to release until I'm in gear and then give it gas. Another smart feature that this car has is something Toyota calls intelligent manual transmission. There's a little button over here that says IMT, and when you have that button pushed and the system activated, it's going to automatically rev match for you. So if you hear all these downshifts and it sounds like I'm just nailing every single one, I have to confess that's not me. I drive this car with that on all the time because I have still yet to master the downshift and the perfect rev match. So Toyota does say that they have that feature, and when engaged, it helps reduce transmission shock. And I've noticed every time I try to downshift and auto blip or rev match by myself, I do a terrible job at it, and the lifespan of this transmission will be significantly reduced if I didn't turn that system on. On the freeway now, downshift a few times, gave you guys an example of that intelligent manual transmission mode. And if I floor it just a little bit, that Suburban was catching up on me. Again, you're not winning any races with this. It's enough horsepower to have fun on some back roads, but like I said, not enough to win any kind of red light races. Intelligent manual transmission. I'm in 6th gear right now. I'm going to go ahead and downshift. I don't know if you can hear that. So all those perfect downshifts you're hearing, sad to say, that's not me. That's the car auto blipping for me. But this transmission is just so easy to learn on and so easy to drive day to day. I've already shown a lot of my friends and family who've always wanted to learn how to drive manual. I felt perfectly comfortable throwing them in the driver's seat and talking them through how to drive a manual. And sure enough, they performed really well in this car. And it's crazy to see the difference between one manual car to another manual car to another manual car, because those same friends I would have go to a buddy's car who has a manual car. They have a manual WRX, and that's a completely different manual transmission, and they would just stall the thing out. So if you're learning how to drive a manual, or you haven't driven one in years and you're kind of shy if you're going to be rusty at first, this car is very forgiving, very easy to pick up on again, and I would do it all over again if I had to. If you guys just take a listen, going highway speeds right now. Hear that road noise? It's not really well insulated. If you think about draining out some of that road noise with some music or anything, the speakers aren't that great. This car is equipped with an upgraded speaker system. I think Toyota calls it Speakers Plus or something like that, and with that package it comes with the infotainment display here, equipped with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And honestly, I would just save your money. I mean, sure, go for the upgrade so you can get the infotainment system, but the speakers aren't that much better than the base ones that come with the car already. So it has me thinking about potentially upgrading the speakers aftermarket. Again, with those auto downshifts. I think I'm crazy, but I think for a 2-liter 4-cylinder, this car doesn't sound that bad. I mean, I've heard some 4-cylinders that sound like they're absolutely struggling and just sound like a high-pitched whine. But I gotta say, this one doesn't sound terrible. So again, off the line, this car, it is a small compact car. It does have the small engine characteristic of off the line, they're pretty zippy. In town, in the city, if you're going, you know, a short distance, it's pretty zippy, but once it gets past like maybe 40 miles an hour, you know, you have to get really high up in the power band before you can feel anything. I think I said max power or max torque is achieved at 55 or 5600 RPM, and this thing redlines at 7,000, so yeah, you're pretty far up there in the power band. But otherwise, suspension-wise, cruising on I've driven the automatic version of this car, and it feels faster. I think it's only because it's an automatic, so naturally it's going to feel faster than a manual. It's going to shift faster than you can, but this one's just more fun. Shifting the gears yourself, sure, you might be slower, but going from point A to point B, I think in any manual is a lot more fun. So if you're considering this car, whether the hatchback or the sedan version, definitely get a manual. Well guys, that'll be it for today's video, and this is my thoughts and opinions and review of the 2020 Toyota Corolla Hatchback XSE. If you guys enjoyed it and found any value in it, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe button down below, help a young up and coming channel like this one. I would really appreciate it. But as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks to you again. 8 cubic feet of, come on, take 74. You know, they've never thought, no, the hatchback, so close.